Some games you play and forget. Some games you play and remember fondly. And then there are games that hit different. Stories that crawl under your skin, change how you see things, or just refuse to leave your brain weeks after you finish them. This list isn't your typical best story games ranking. These are 19 PlayStation games that do something to you emotionally, philosophically, or atmospherically that most games don't even attempt. And here's the thing, each game on this list is unique in what it does. So number 1 isn't necessarily the best, it's just close to my personal favorite. The order is more about variety than hierarchy. Quick question, which game do you think will hit me the hardest? Drop your guess in the comments. I want to see if you know my taste. Alright, let's get into it. Detroit Become Human is Quantic Dream at their most ambitious, and despite the heavy-handed metaphors, the story hits when it needs to. You're playing as 3 androids: Kara, a housekeeper protecting a child, Connor, a detective hunting deviants, and Marcus, a caretaker turns revolutionary. Their stories intersect as androids begin gaining consciousness and fighting for freedom. The branching paths are genuinely impressive. Characters can die in Chapter 2, and the story continues without them. Relationships shift based on choices. The flowcharts at the end of each chapter show how different your playthrough is from others, and seeing alternate paths is addictive. The civil rights allegory is not subtle, at all, but the performances sell it. Brian DeChart as Connor, Jesse Williams as Marcus, Valerie Curry as Kara. The motion capture is some of the best in gaming, and the emotional beats land even when the writing is clumsy. The Kara-Alice relationship is the heart of the game. The Connor-Hank dynamic is the most compelling, and Marcus's revolution can be peaceful or violent, and both paths are fully realized. This hits different because it asks genuine questions about consciousness, free will, and what makes us human, and it trusts you to make choices that define the answer. Last Judgment is a Yakuza-style detective thriller about a lawyer investigating a serial killer, and it's one of the most narratively ambitious games in the series. You're Takayuki Yagami, tracking a vigilante who's targeting bullies and sexual predators. The moral questions are immediate. Is this justice or murder? The game doesn't give easy answers. The villain's motivations are understandable even when his actions aren't, and the story digs into systemic failures, how institutions protect abusers and fail victims. The investigation gameplay is strong, tailing suspects, gathering evidence, analyzing crime scenes. The combat is Yakuza excellence, multiple fighting styles, environmental finishers, over-the-top heat actions. And the side content is absurd. You're running a boxing gym, infiltrating a high school, playing arcade games. But the story is what elevates this. The final confrontation asks you to grapple with whether revenge is justice, and the game respects that tension. The ending is somber and thoughtful, not triumphant. This hits different because it's a crime thriller that takes its themes seriously. It's not just pulp, it's a story about morality, justice, and whether the system can ever truly protect the vulnerable. Spiritfarer is a game about ferrying souls to the afterlife, and it will make you cry while you're watering vegetables and cooking meals. You're Stella, a Spiritfarer, guiding spirits to their final rest. You build a bow, gather resources, and help each spirit process their unfinished business before letting them go. Every spirit represents someone in Stella's life, and every goodbye is permanent. The gameplay is cozy. Farming, cooking, crafting, platforming, but the emotional weight builds slowly. You're spending hours with these characters, learning their stories, and then you have to say goodbye. The Everdoor, the final farewell, is devastating every single time. Gwen is the first to go, and she sets the tone. Alice's memory loss is heartbreaking. Gustav's pride is tragic. Each character is dealing with regret, acceptance, or unfinished love, and you're helping them find peace. The art is gorgeous, hand-drawn animations, vibrant colors, beautiful environments. The music is gentle and melancholic, and the ending, when you finally understand Stella's role, reframes everything. This hits different because it's about death without being morbid. It treats dying as a natural part of life, and it asks you to sit with grief and let go with grace. Life is Strange: True Colors is about a woman with empathic powers investigating her brother's death in a small Colorado town, and it's the most mature entry in the series. You're Alex Chen, and you can feel and manipulate others' emotions. It sounds like a superpower, but the game treats it like a burden. You're absorbing trauma, feeling grief that isn't yours, and struggling with when to help and when to let people process on their own. The mystery of what happened to your brother unravels slowly. The town of Haven Springs feels real. Small town politics, local gossip, people with histories. The supporting cast is strong. Steph is charming and flawed, Ryan is complicated, and the game doesn't force a romance. It lets relationships develop naturally. The emotion reading mechanic is used for investigation and empathy. You're seeing auras, reading emotional states, and making choices about whether to intervene. The LRP episode is pure joy. The confrontation with the villain is cathartic. The music is beautiful, original tracks and licensed indie songs that fit perfectly. And the ending gives you closure while acknowledging that grief doesn't just disappear. This hits different because it's about emotional labor. Alex helps everyone around her while barely holding herself together, and the game explores that burden with empathy. Quick check, if any of these games already got you, let me know in the comments. Curious if we're on the same wavelength here. Alright, let's continue. Persona 5 Royal is a 120-hour JRPG about teenage rebels stealing hearts, and it's one of the most stylish, confident games ever made. You're living a dual life, high school student by day, phantom thief by night. The story targets systemic corruption, abusive teachers, exploitative bosses, corrupt politicians. Each palace represents a distorted desire, and infiltrating them is both dungeon crawling and social commentary. The cast is phenomenal. Every phantom thief has trauma they're processing, abuse, exploitation, parental pressure, and their arcs are given real time and weight. The Confidant system lets you build relationships across Tokyo, and the side stories are sometimes better than the main plot. Royal adds Kasumi and a third semester that reframes the entire game. The new ending is better. The quality of life improvements make the 120-hour runtime less daunting, and the art direction, menus, UI, battle animations is chef's kiss. The music is iconic. Last Surprise will live in your head forever. The style is unmatched, and the message about fighting back against systems that crush individuality is delivered without being preachy. This hits different because it makes you feel like you're living in Tokyo. The day-to-day routines, the friendships, the sense of place, it's immersive in a way most games can't touch. In 2018, Santa Monica did the impossible. They made Kratos a father and turned a revenge fantasy into a meditation on legacy and growth. This isn't the old God of War, no button-mashing spectacle. This is slower, heavier, more deliberate. The Leviathan axe throws and recalls with weight you can feel. Combat relies on spacing, timing, and using Atreus strategically. But the real genius is the relationship. Kratos is raising a son while running from a past full of violence and regret. The entire game is one continuous camera shot. No cuts, no loading. You're traveling through Norse realms, fighting gods, solving puzzles, and watching a damaged man try to be better for his kid. The tension between them is real. Atreus wants approval. Kratos doesn't know how to give it without also preparing him for a brutal world. The stranger fight sets the tone. Brutal, personal, and ending with questions that hang over the entire game. And the reveal of Kratos' past to Atreus is one of the best acted scenes in gaming. This hits different because it's a story about breaking cycles. Kratos was defined by rage and revenge, and now he's trying to teach his son to be better. It's a dad game, but it earns every emotional beat. Stray is a game where you're a cat navigating a cyberpunk city populated by robots, and somehow it's one of the most emotionally resonant games in years. You're separated from your cat family and trying to find your way home. Along the way, you're exploring a decaying city, solving environmental puzzles, and slowly uncovering what happened to the humans who used to live here. The robots have built a society mimicking humanity, but they're trapped underground, and their longing for the outside world is quietly tragic. The cat movement is perfect. You're jumping on railings, knocking things off shelves, meowing at robots who treat you like you're precious. There's no dialogue, you're a cat, but the environmental storytelling and your robot companion, B12, fill in the narrative. The atmosphere is incredible. Neon-lit alleys, rusted infrastructure, jazz clubs where robots pretend to drink. The world feels lived in and melancholic. And the Zerk sequences, where you're running from alien parasites, are genuinely tense. The ending is bittersweet. You escape, but you're leaving behind friends who can't follow. The final shot is ambiguous and perfect. This hits different because it proves you don't need human characters or dialogue to tell an emotional story. You're a cat, that's it, and it works. Concrete Genie is a game about a bullied kid using art to bring a dying town back to life, and it's one of the most wholesome stories PlayStation has published. You're Ash, painting murals that come to life and spread color through a polluted industrial town. The genies you create help you solve environmental puzzles and spread light. The core gameplay loop is creative and joyful. You're designing creatures, choosing colors, watching your art move and interact. But underneath the charm is a story about bullying, loneliness, and how creativity can be an escape and a weapon. The bullies aren't one-dimensional villains. They have their own struggles and home lives. The game doesn't excuse their behavior, but it humanizes them. There's a VR mode where you're painting in first person, and it's one of the best uses of PSVR. Standing in these environments and creating art at scale is magical. The story is short, about 5 hours, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. The ending is hopeful without being saccharine, and the message about art as healing is delivered without being preachy. This hits different because it's gentle. In a medium full of violence and cynicism, Concrete Genie is just about a kid making the world more beautiful. And that's enough. Beyond Two Souls is a quantic dream game about a woman psychically linked to an entity named Aiden, and despite its flaws, the story hits harder than people give it credit for. You're playing as Jodie across different points in her life: childhood experiments, CIA missions, homelessness, romance. The narrative is told non-linearly, jumping between timelines, and it takes a while to understand how everything connects. But the performances, Ellen Page, now Elliot Page, and Willem Dafoe are phenomenal. The gameplay is standard Quantic Dream. Quick time events, choices, branching paths, but the emotional beats land. There's a scene where Jodie is homeless and alone, and you're just trying to survive the cold, and it's one of the most grounded moments in any David Cage game. There's a party sequence where she's trying to fit in and everything goes wrong, and it's painfully relatable. The entity, Aiden, is both protection and curse. You can use it to help Jodie or hurt people, and those choices affect how the story resolves. The ending branches significantly based on how you've treated Aiden and the people around Jodie. This hits different because it's about loneliness and connection. Jodie has power but can't have a normal life, and the game explores that isolation with surprising empathy. Kena is a game that looks like a Pixar film and plays like a Zelda game, but underneath the beauty is a story about grief and letting go. You're a spirit guide helping souls move on, but every spirit you help is dealing with unresolved trauma. There's a craftsman who abandoned his family, there's a sibling who blames themselves for their brother's death, and Kena herself is running from her own past, using her duty to avoid dealing with her own grief. The Rot, little spirit creatures that follow you, are adorable and functional. You use them to solve puzzles and attack enemies, but they're also thematic. They represent decay, the things we don't deal with, the emotions we bury. Cleansing corruption isn't just gameplay, it's metaphor. The combat is legitimately challenging. Boss fights require parries, dodges, and pattern recognition. The forest spirit fights are beautiful and tragic. You're fighting corrupted souls and freeing them, and each one has a story. The art direction is gorgeous: lush forests, overgrown villages, spirit realms that glow with bioluminescence, and the ending ties Kana's journey to the spirit she's helped in a way that's quiet and cathartic. This hits different because it's proof that games can look joyful and deal with heavy themes at the same time. It respects grief without wallowing in it. A Plague Tale: Requiem is a stealth game about a sister protecting her plague-infected brother, and it's one of the most emotionally brutal experiences on PlayStation. Amicia is trying to save Hugo, her younger brother whose blood is connected to a supernatural rat plague. The entire game is about watching her do increasingly desperate things to keep him alive, while watching him slowly lose himself to the disease. The sibling bond is written with heartbreaking authenticity. They argue, they protect each other, they share quiet moments between horror. The gameplay is stealth with environmental puzzles. You're using light sources to navigate through swarms of rats that devour anything in darkness. There's a sequence in a city being consumed where you're using a sling to light torches and create safe paths, and the tension is suffocating. And when Hugo loses control, the rats become a weapon, and you feel the horror of that power. The visuals are stunning. Southern France, lavender fields, coastal towns, ancient ruins, rendered beautifully, then contrasted with plague-ravaged cities and bodies piled in streets. The ending is brutal. The game doesn't flinch from the consequences of its premise, and that left me emotionally wrecked. This isn't a happy story. It's a story about love in the face of inevitable loss. This hits different because it's willing to destroy you. Most games pull their punches. This one doesn't. The Last Guardian is a game about a boy and a giant creature named Trico escaping a fortress, and it's one of the most emotionally affecting games ever made despite its jank. Trico isn't a gameplay tool, it's a creature. It gets distracted, it doesn't always listen, it acts like an actual animal, which means sometimes it's frustrating, but that's the point. You're building trust with something that doesn't owe you obedience. You feed it, remove spears from its body, calm it when it's scared, and slowly, over 15 hours, it stops being AI and starts feeling alive. The puzzles are environmental, using Trico's size and abilities to navigate ruins, but the real progression is emotional. There's a moment late in the game where Trico is wounded and you're trying to pull a spear from its side, and it's thrashing in pain, and you're crying because this creature has become real to you. The ending is devastating, not because of death, but because of separation. The bond you've built over the entire game comes to a natural, bittersweet conclusion, and the final moments will break you. This hits different because it's one of the only games that makes you feel genuine love for a non-human character. Trico isn't a pet, it's a companion, and losing it hurts. NieR Automata is a game about androids fighting a proxy war for extinct humans, and it uses video game structure as narrative commentary in ways nothing else does. You play as 2B and 9S, combat androids fighting machines on a ruined Earth. The setup sounds like standard post-apocalyptic action. Then the game reveals the machines are developing culture, religion, and emotions. Then it reveals the android's mission is built on a lie. Then it reveals humanity has been extinct for thousands of years, and the war is meaningless. And that's just the first ending. The game has 5 main endings labeled A through E, and each one reframes everything that came before. Ending A is 2B's perspective. Ending B is 9S's perspective on the same events, and you realize how much you missed. Ending C splits into tragedy. Ending D is worse. Ending E asks if you're willing to sacrifice your save file to help other players, and thousands of people did, and their messages appear as you fight through the credits. The amusement park boss fight is tragic. The Forest Kingdom is philosophical. Pascal's Village will make you question your choices, and the soundtrack is one of the best ever composed. This hits different because it uses the medium itself as part of the message. It asks what it means to have purpose when existence is meaningless, and whether connection matters even when everything ends. 13 Sentinels is a sci-fi visual novel about time travel, mechs, and the end of the world, and it has the most ambitious narrative structure I've seen in a game. You're controlling 13 different characters across different time periods: 1940s Japan, 1980s high school, 2025 apocalypse, and their stories intersect in ways that break your brain. The game doesn't hold your hand. You piece together the mystery by jumping between perspectives, and for the first 10 hours, nothing makes sense. Then it clicks, and the entire narrative recontextualizes itself. The plot deals with AI, simulation theory, loops within loops, and questions about what makes us human. There are twists that completely change earlier scenes. Characters you thought were allies are enemies. Events you thought happened didn't. Time travel paradoxes stack on top of each other until you're drawing diagrams to keep track. The mech combat is separate from the story. Top-down tower defense that's honestly just okay. But the story is so good, you'll tolerate mediocre gameplay to see where it goes. This hits different because it respects your intelligence. It assumes you can handle complexity, ambiguity, and non-linear storytelling, and it rewards you for paying attention with one of the smartest sci-fi narratives in gaming. Returnal is a roguelike bullet hell game, but the story buried underneath the gameplay is a psychological horror nightmare about trauma and loops you can't escape. You're Celine, crashing on a hostile alien planet stuck in a time loop. Every death resets the world. The only way forward is to keep dying, learning, pushing deeper. But the story isn't about the planet, it's about Celine's past, her guilt, her unraveling mind. The audio logs get increasingly disturbing. You find recordings of yourself from previous loops, but they remember things you don't. The game blurs the line between the alien planet and Celine's childhood home. There are moments where you're walking through a 1980s house while the alien world bleeds through the walls, and it's deeply unsettling. The Greek tragedy parallels are intentional. Celine's name references the moon goddess condemned to repeat cycles. The planet might be real, might be purgatory, might be her own psyche. The game never gives you a clear answer. This hits different because it uses roguelike structure as narrative metaphor. The repetition isn't just gameplay, it's the point. You're stuck in loops just like Celine, and escaping requires confronting trauma you'd rather forget. What Remains of Edith Finch is a 2-hour walking simulator about a cursed family, and it will wreck you emotionally in ways you're not prepared for. You're Edith Finch, exploring your family's abandoned house and uncovering how each family member died. Every death is told as a separate vignette with unique gameplay. One story has you as a child, imagining being different animals. Another has you working in a cannery while daydreaming about being a king. Each one shifts perspective, tone, and mechanics. The Gregory story will destroy you. The bathtub, the toys, the realization of what's happening. I won't spoil it, but if you know, you know. And if you don't, you're not ready. The environmental storytelling is masterclass. You're piecing together family history through photographs, bedrooms frozen in time, and artifacts that tell stories without words. The narration is beautifully performed, and the music swells at exactly the right moments. This hits different because it treats death with empathy and curiosity instead of horror. It asks what it means to live a full life, even when it's short, and it does it in 2 hours better than most games do in 50. Disco Elysium is a detective RPG with zero combat where you play as a cop having an existential crisis, and the writing is better than most actual novels. You wake up with complete amnesia after a multi-day bender, and you're supposed to be investigating a murder, but the real investigation is into yourself, your past, your failures, your political beliefs, your identity. Your own thoughts talk to you as distinct characters. Your ancient reptilian brain wants you to give in to impulses. Your inland empire makes surreal connections. Your electrochemistry craves drugs and chaos. The dialogue is literary. This isn't game writing, this is prose that would work in a novel. The political commentary is sharp and nuanced. You can be a fascist, a communist, a centrist, or apolitical, and the game explores each ideology with depth and critique. There's a conversation with a woman about the nature of reality that's more philosophically dense than most philosophy courses. Every choice shapes who your character becomes. You solve the case, but you don't necessarily solve yourself. The ending offers no easy answers, just ambiguity and the weight of choices you've made. This hits different because it treats you like an adult. It doesn't explain everything, it doesn't hold your hand, it just gives you one of the best written stories in gaming and trusts you to engage with it. Death Stranding is Kojima making a game about connection and isolation disguised as a walking simulator, and it's one of the most polarizing games ever made. You're a delivery man rebuilding America one package at a time. That's it. You walk across mountains, rivers, and ruins carrying cargo while avoiding ghosts and terrorists. It sounds boring, it shouldn't work, and yet for some people, it's transcendent. The gameplay is meditative. You're planning routes, balancing weight, building infrastructure for other players. Every delivery feels meaningful because you're literally reconnecting a broken country. There's a sequence delivering medicine through a snowstorm where your boots are falling apart and you're rationing stamina, and it's the most tense a walking game has ever been. The story is pure Kojima chaos. 5-hour cutscenes, celebrity cameos, metaphors about connection that require a film degree to parse. But underneath the weirdness is something genuine, a story about people isolated by tragedy learning to reach out again. And when you crest a hill after a brutal trek and the low roar track kicks in, it's perfect. This hits different because it's so aggressively itself. No other game feels like this, plays like this, or makes you think about loneliness and connection quite like this. This game split the fan base in half, and 5 years later, people still can't agree on whether it's brilliant or a betrayal. You spend the first half hunting down Abby, fully invested in Ellie's revenge, watching her spiral into violence and lose pieces of herself with every kill. Then, the game forces you to play as Abby for 10 hours, the person you've been trying to murder, and you hate it at first, but the writing earns that perspective shift. By the end, you understand both sides of a conflict where nobody wins, nobody's the hero, and everyone's just trying to survive in a world that's already broken. The combat is brutal and desperate. There's a flooded subway fight where infected and human enemies attack each other, and you're just using the chaos to survive. The motion capture performances are so good you forget these are polygons. And the museum flashback with Joel and Ellie, 2 hours of character building with 0 combat, is some of the best storytelling in any medium. This hits different because it refuses to give you easy answers. It asks, and that's 19. Some obvious, some slept on, but all of them stick with you in ways most games don't. Now, I want to hear from you. Which one on this list hit you the hardest? Which one am I completely wrong about? Drop a comment because I genuinely read all of them, and I want to know your take. Catch you in the comments.